Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And welcome to today's Solenis Insight about discovering hidden process dynamics by combining artificial intelligence with papermaking process knowledge. I'm Beth Ann Zarko, product marketer for Solenis's digital solutions, and I'll be your facilitator for today's meeting. I would like to thank you all for joining us today. Before we get started, some housekeeping items I'd like to cover. Please keep your line muted during the presentation. We will have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end of the presentation. At that time, you may unmute your line to ask questions or type them in the chat window. On your toolbar on your screen, there's a chat icon. At that, you can use the icon there to open up the chat window, and you can enter your questions in there. If you have a question during the presentation, I welcome you to either chat or type it in the chat window or raise your hand using the hand icon also found on your toolbar below. So the webinar is being recorded, and a copy of this webinar will be shared on solenis.com, and we will share that link with you following the session. So now allow me to introduce you today our speakers. First is Paul Valek. He is the General Manager and Global Marketing Leader for Predictive Analytics. Paul leads the overall strategic direction and commercial deployment of the OPTIX Applied Intelligence platform. Paul has over 25 years of experience in finance, commercial, product management, Six Sigma, strategic marketing, and holds a BS in finance from Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan. Also with us today is Tony Lewis, the Global Product Manager of Digital Solutions. With more than 23 years in the paper industry and experience, Tony leads the product development team for the OPTIX Applied Intelligence platform and other advanced analytics developments. Tony holds a Bachelor's of Science in Paper Science Engineering from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry in Syracuse, New York. That's a mouthful. And an MBA from Eastern University in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and it is a certified Agile practitioner. So Paul and Tony today will be taking us through an introduction of OPTIX Applied Intelligence, a live demonstration of the product, examples of OPTIX in practice, and at this point, I'll hand it over to Paul.
Great. Thank you very much, Beth Ann. I'm excited to be with you here today, along with Tony. Just based on the number of attendees, we've had over 120 people register from all over the country. Just shows the type of interest we all have in this topic today. So thanks again for joining us. Most of the people on this call should already be familiar with who Solenis is and what we do. If you don't, just a quick introduction is we are one of the leading specialty chemical suppliers to the pulp and paper industry. And not only do we supply those specialty chemicals, we support them with our local field and applications expertise, as well as our data and analytics solutions, which we'll be covering today. This skill set and applications have been built over 100 years. You see some of our legacy companies, one of the largest and newest companies to join the Solenis family is the BASF paper and water business that joined Solenis just last year. And we really pride ourselves on being able to service customers in 120 different countries around the world, not only with our local field presence, but our global footprint of manufacturing, R&D, and applications centers. And I think that that capability reflects who we have on the call today. We have, again, people from all over the world. And if you'd like to learn more about Solenis in general, please visit solenis.com for more details. But today, before we get into the technology itself, thought it would be good to highlight, what is our industry, the pulp and paper industry, dealing with today, and how does that link with using advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning? First of all, our business is becoming more and more complex every day. Mills are more complex than they were 20 years ago. Machines are more complex. And that's happening in an environment where you, as pulp and paper mills, are under tremendous amount of pressure to continuously improve and find optimization opportunities in your mills. And a lot of our customers, a lot of paper manufacturers realize that they need to do more in order to reach that potential. And so we're seeing a lot of our customers developing or starting to investigate data and analytics strategies. There are customers that and participants that are on this call today that are further along on that journey, and others are just starting. But this is becoming a core competency and focus area in our industries, and we're right aligned with those needs. Along with those strategies, the market is investing in new data solutions, implementing more advanced data historians and PI systems, doing more sensors, trying to capture as much information about the processes as possible to make more intelligent decisions. From a people perspective, your employees are becoming more comfortable and are expected to use and want to use more advanced tools. They want to be able to solve the problems, these complex problems, in the most efficient and effective ways. And then also, when you look at it from a talent perspective, younger people coming out of university or schools that are joining your organizations, they tend to gravitate towards those organizations that are more cutting edge, that are using the latest tools. And so this also plays a role in regards to attracting the right talent, particularly when a lot of experience, at least in North America, is retiring or about to retire in the next few years. The good thing is that artificial intelligence and the tools associated with that are becoming more effective and more available. You know, one thing that we hope to help you do today is kind of clarify and cut through some of the claims and the noise, and really get down to what exists and what it takes to implement this effectively. There's a lot of things that are happening in this marketplace. You know, we've had customers tell us that they get 20 emails a week, somebody claiming having an artificial or a predictive solution. And again, we hope to help you be able to answer and ask the right questions to pick the right approach and the right tools for you. And then obviously, right, we know what's happening in the world today with COVID. But if you're interested, there are some very interesting articles around how COVID and the virus is fundamentally impacting manufacturing, everything from more focus on capturing data in a plant to autonomous operations to remote monitoring. And you'll see how OPTIX aligns with that. And I encourage you to follow that link when this presentation is sent out to read those articles. And on a more local level, obviously our mill management, the process engineers, operators are dealing with very localized issues as well. As these mills become more complex, more sensors, there's just a tremendous amount of data that mills have to deal with, and they need solutions to be able to effectively use that information. Plus, this information is not simple, right? It's just not linear or simple relationships. The dynamics between process variables is very complex, highly variable, multidimensional, and you need the right tools to address those. And that's what our customers want to do. They want to get to understanding what's causing the issues in their mill. Why are they running below target, right? In a lot of cases right now, they just don't have the tools to give them the granularity or the visibility in real time to get to those answers. One example, and this helps to kind of frame when Tony gets into the details of, in a very simple kind of these graphs of what are the dynamics and how do we tend to solve problems today. For the most part, we rely on simple linear relationships. On the chart on the left-hand side, it gives an example of basis, weight, and strength. Two variables that tend to be linearly correlated, and to understand that a mill can achieve some low-hanging fruit, right? There is definitely value in understanding those types of dynamics, but they only get you so far. Why? They only get you so far because in reality, the processes of your paper machine and your mill are much more complex. It's not just a one-to-one relationship that is linear. You can have relationships that are multidimensional, which is represented on, not just 2 dots, but hundreds of dots, hundreds of variables and factors that are influencing one another. As an example, the relationships between strength, formation, and basis weight. And then when you get into it even deeper is when you look at the mathematical relationships. So what's really going on with these variables, they're very complex. Some of them are linear, some of them aren't. Sometimes these relationships are more prevalent at certain times than others. And so given the inherent complexity and the reality of how your machines and your operations run, you need solutions that address the true underlying conditions and environment of the machine. Yesterday, you could get away with approaching it from the left-hand side and using tools that, again, kind of do it more to simple correlations, one-dimensional analysis, basic Six Sigma and statistics. But that fruit has already been picked. If you really want to go to the next level and truly optimize and squeeze as much opportunity and efficiency and productivity out of your mills as possible, you need tools that focus on the right-hand side of the page, because that's what reality really is. So given what the industry is dealing with, given why today's and yesterday's approaches are suboptimal, given the reality of papermaking, is what is OPTIX? And what are the fundamental components? So simply, OPTIX is a cloud-based platform using sophisticated tools to be able to deal with the amount of data and the complexity of data that exists. Our mills can have 5,000, 10,000 or more process variables, and you need technologies to be able to look at that information effectively. So we take these inherent analytical capabilities and the computing horsepower. We take a look at the physical quality measurements or response variables of your operations. And these are mostly focused on quality parameters such as strength or brightness or kappa. Whatever your key quality parameter is, we can model. We take that into consideration when we're building our approach. What's really important here is that the OPTIX solution is built not only with our great technology partner, Process Miner, but we combine that technology expertise, that artificial intelligence and machine learning expertise with Solenis's papermaking domain expertise. And that's so important is because so many times solutions are generic and they don't put things into context. And we know that papermaking is a unique continuous manufacturing process. We know that machines are unique. We know that mills are unique. And so what we've developed is solutions based on papermaking expertise and not just to try to force a generic tool set into papermaking. This was made from papermaking aspects from the ground up. And this is what truly differentiates us from other technology providers is we have that domain. We talk the language of our operators. We understand what's happening in the mills. And so we can apply the technology and interpret the results in the right way. We're all doing this with real-time data. So that's why you need the computing horsepower that we do. And at the end of the day, what we do is we produce a couple things. We produce a soft sensor, So if you want to get strength and other quality parameters in real time, instead of waiting 45 minutes, the only way you can do that today, since physical sensors do not exist, you have to do it with math. You have to do it with artificial intelligence and machine learning. So what you get is you get that virtual soft sensor. You also get an analytics platform that identifies the dominant variables impacting that prediction. And those two things allow you to really have the flexibility and the ability to do things in your mill that you weren't able to do before, and really be able to gain insights not previously accessible just because the tools were not available. So in short, what OPTIX provides is that real-time virtual or soft sensor so that operators can make on-the-fly process changes. That's number one. And number two is the analytics behind the prediction to, again, identify different variables impacting the process to really drive further optimization across the processes. From a competitive advantage, is this chart is not intended to compare really one to another, but hopefully it's to help you ask the right questions depending on your situation. And what do I mean by that is, again, if you believe that to solve your problems, the best people to do that are people that actually have paper process experience, well, that's a great place to start. Number two is, what are you after? If you're after as much optimization as possible, which means that you need real-time visibility to what's going on, you got to have a predictive soft sensor that can be able to do that in real time. Three is, what do I mean by analytically robust? As I mentioned, we've partnered with the best data science experts in the world, that their technology has been built on the backbone of pulp and paper expertise. That's why we have an exclusive relationship with them. But really, it's understanding your process and knowing that your process, the pulp and paper making process, is a continuous and highly variable environment. That takes a different solution and has to be more robust than if your process was just discrete. And so as you evaluate different solutions, right, we recommend that you understand that there's a big difference between solutions that were built on discrete manufacturing principles versus solutions that were built on continuous and highly variable processes. Another thing is what we call the self-tuning or adaptive, the machine learning part. There's a lot of solutions out there now that can give outputs, but what happens? A process engineer tends to use a tool set, develop some models, and those models were built on the conditions at the time in which those models were built. And so the effectiveness or the accuracy of that model is only as good as if the process stays exactly the same as when those models were built. But as we know, things never stay the same in a paper mill. Things are constantly changing for hundreds of different reasons. And so what you want to make sure you have is that your models are always reflecting the underlying process conditions and are always as accurate as possible without having to have manual intervention where you have a process engineer coming back every few weeks or every couple months trying to update those models, right? Is what you don't want your resources to be updating the models. What you want your resources is to be interpreting and working with your vendors to understand what's going on and how to improve the process, not burning calories just to keep a model up and running and up to date. And so again, asking how these models or how a solution continues to adapt, continues to maintain its accuracy, continues to learn is a very important consideration. Another thing is to what extent are the models tailored to your operations, right? Again, we know that even if you have 2 paper machines, running side by side, that things are different on those machines. And not just because of the grades. You know, parts wear differently, operators may control those machines differently. There's just going to be some inherent variation between machine and another machine. And so what we believe is that the more that you can tailor your solution to the specific machines and the grades on that paper, that's when you're going to have a better solution, as opposed to trying to utilize a generic approach, right? That maybe it was even developed in a different industry, right? But then is trying to be applied in the unique environment of pulp and paper. We believe that the more you can tailor it to the specific machine dynamics and grades on that machine, that's where you're going to get the most value. And then lastly, not the most important, right? Because what you really want to do is make sure that you get value is what's it going to cost? And our position in Solenis is that we want to use OPTIX as a differentiator and a way to add as much value to our clients as possible. And so, yes, you know, is that model going to work everywhere? But that's what we want to lead with. And so we're not trying to do a purely subscription model. You don't have to invest CapEx, right? You don't have to go through lengthy setup and or fight for resources if you're developing these solutions internally. We're trying to make it not only as technically easy to do business, but also commercially to make it easy as possible to do business with Solenis when it comes to our artificial intelligence and machine learning platform. So again, the key point of this one is not to compare or contrast Solenis to other alternatives. Yes, we can do that, but more about what are some of the things that you should consider in comparing one alternative to the next, and making sure that those actually address what you're after. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Tony. Tony's going to go over some of the IT architecture and then walk through a demo.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just getting folks familiar with, okay, we're talking about accessing customer data to be able to do this. So obviously there's sensitivity and there's things that need to be put in place around security. This is just a high-level overview. Really looking at, if you look on the lower left there, we install an agent. Really, we're making a connection to the historian, tapping into that data, and then bringing that into our security layer, which is predominantly on AWS. We also have the capability to operate on Microsoft Azure. So both systems are robust. With that being said, you know, as anybody who's worked on AWS, you get the benefits of the security and all the tools they have and resources. That being said, you can see on the right, once we get through and the data's secured and the connection, we've got access to, you know, all of our engines and our features that make up OPTIX, right? Powered by Process Miner, our partner. So you can see some of the engines we have in there around prediction, monitoring, and we'll go through some of those in the demonstration. Sending the information back out, how we're sending that out is through, again, secure through a URL. In the control room, separate monitor setup, you just access it via the internet, all securely. The other ways we're exploring is sending that information back to be visualized in the customer's current BI applications, just for simplicity. And then also even you can see IoT type controllers sending information back to potentially control processes. These are all things that are we're all kind of working for, but just kind of a high level overview of what some of the things that Paul talked about. Yes, it's real-time data. We're going to tap in securely, process that information, and then bring it back to you. So Paul, if you want to go to the next slide. I guess here I'm going to take control and we'll walk you through just a high level overview of the application, talk through the use cases, and then follow it up with some more specific use cases where customers have gained value. So let me take control here. All right. So here we have, once you log in, and again, all of that login is secure, right? And it's all controlled in concert with the customer as to who has access and what they have access to. We roll in our application. High level overview, you see there's some tabs here that kind of help you navigate through the different pieces. We're not going to go through all those. We're going to go through some of the main ones that people are using to kind of get some value. First page we land on is basic dashboard, right? People have dashboards all over. And really this is where we put the real-time prediction, because we're giving a predicted value every 30 seconds. And like Paul said, it's on a quality parameter. Here we've got strength, but we're not limited to strength. Pretty much any quality parameter that has data that's taken, so think of something destructive you do at the end of the paper machine, and that's processed data to be able to be examined with that from your historian. We feel we're pretty successful. We can build a model out of it, or we can give you some information as to why maybe that's not possible. And we'll talk a little bit more of that in the process as to how we put these together. But here, real quickly, what we wanted to do with the dashboard is give, on a operator view, hey, I have a prediction, which now I have a piece of information I didn't have before. I'd have to wait for my quality test, right? Then I would have to decide what to do. And because I knew my next quality test wasn't coming for another 30, 45, hour and a half minutes, I may make a lot of changes, a lot of decisions get made, right? So now they've got visibility, so we kind of show it in context of all of the specifications that the mill wants, right? Upper control limits, things of that nature, target. And then we can show multiple predictions, or in this case, we can also tailor this to kind of help drive decision making, right? So in strength, anyone who's been around a packaging machine, right? Basis weight and light weighting is important. Speed is important, throughput. So really kind of, we can put up a story in here or key parameters that really kind of help drive the decision making towards where the customer wants to go. And that's a key piece with all of this is, and Paul alluded to it, is not just bringing out a bunch of tools that people can get lost in. It's really trying to target this information and use the technology to kind of drive action to get things done, right, and create value. So with this, hey, I got my real-time prediction, and now I can make decisions also on how I want to manage my basis weight, and or what I can do about speed. We also, you see up here, things around the machine state we have to bring in. Obviously, we need to look at breaks differently because we're using an advanced predictive model. And then also grades. Grades are different. Just as we know on paper machines, there could be hydraulic limitations, speed limitations, steam limitations. So all that's in the data, so we want to be able to segment that out when we look at it, which is an uncommon in traditional analysis. Moving from the dashboard, we move into our prediction trending. So now all we're looking at is that prediction value over time. So it's a trend line. I always kind of would equate this to, hey, we didn't have a flow meter. Now we've got a quality flow meter in here. With that being said, you can see we've got all the limits lined in there. The predictions being updated every 30 seconds. And the biggest thing we trying to train folks to do here is, okay, hey, in this case, your strength is going down. What decisions would you make traditionally? You would get that lab value back. Now you can make them earlier, and you can potentially make them more refined. So we've all seen a mill, hey, I'm not going to get my value, quality value for another, like you said, 30, 40 minutes. I'm going to change like 3 things. 2 of them might be right. One of them may be wrong. Now here with the predictive model, you can, hey, I'm going to maybe add a little refining and see what happens to my model. I'm going to make a change and see what the response is. I have that opportunity now. With that, going down to other tools we have, which aren't really as useful, but the back end that we look at is the machine learning component. So each time you can see here on the black line is each time we get a new lab value. And the artificial intelligence takes that value and it looks at how it predicted at that time, and then it adjusts what variables it looks at, how well it's calibrated. So it does all of that tuning via real-time machine learning versus some of the traditional, when you set up a SAW sensor, you kind of have to go back, update it, things change and the process shifts. Here we're taking that into account to always try and maintain an accurate prediction. You can see the gray area is our prediction range, kind of our confidence interval. So as that kind of gets larger and smaller, that's an indication of machine learning, process variability taking place. But it's all just kind of stuff in the background to really kind of ensure that in real time we're getting a good prediction that is of less error and of higher accuracy than if you were just waiting for your test so you can make better decisions. So some operators and folks will kind of gravitate towards this trend because they have a lot of trend lines. Base thing we try and say is, hey, use it like a trend, right? If it's going down, make your control decision. Moving from that, obviously the next kind of questions we get is, well, if you have a predictive model, you should be able to tell me what's driving it, right? What's important? That's the natural question. So now we're going to move over into the influencers page and kind of look at what is driving the prediction at this time. So as we all know, not everything is important all the time in papermaking. Sometimes we make adjustments to finding and they really don't get us where they're not impactful to our strength. Same things in issue. In using a real-time machine learning, you're always getting that feedback to understand, okay, am I using the right variables of my larger data set? And do I need to adjust them and look at them and then kind of really reconfigure my model? And this is kind of a very simplified version of what's going on there. So you can see there's a last time it was updated, but every time the AI updates this could change. There could be 15 things here an hour from now. It could stay relatively stable if we've got a stable process for some time. But here we start to see, hey, what's important to strength? Well, this is an uncommon. Hey, weight control is pretty important to strength. And that's our number one influencer. Other things we see make sense from a subject matter expertise, refining. Okay, that makes sense. Vacuum. But then we can see other things in here like, okay, well, why is this flow or the calendar torque? Why do those things make sense to us? And I think what we have to always keep in mind is things that are used for prediction they're used for prediction, right? They create a good prediction. They may not necessarily make sense when we try and ask the questions around root cause, which is a little bit separate. So it's important to think, the model is mathematically looking at the fingerprints in the data to really say, what things do I need to make an accurate prediction? And that's the key piece. So I can take action on that, not really getting a root cause. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So overview of what's going on in prediction. And this is a good place also as when we see that prediction kind of going down, or moving in an area we don't want it to go, we can go here for some first level root cause, right? Because these are the key parameters that are driving. And I may want to say, hey, a couple of these I can move, a couple of these I can't directly move. But okay, hey, maybe I want to, hey, I could make a move on my weight control. That's going to cost me a lot of money. Maybe I'll go on my refiner because the model's telling me that's being impactful, and make my change. Like I said, some of this is very obvious, the example, but sometimes we draw things that are not so obvious that help folks. And then it also goes in the lines with what are the right things to do at the time, as we all know, because like I said, not always the things we do are impactful. So now if we look at this information, here's now digging into away from the operator a little bit and now start looking at it from the standpoint of an asset manager or a process engineer, kind of looking deeper to understand, okay, how do I really see kind of what's going on in my data and then maybe change my control strategy or audit how well it's doing to control my parameter like strength. Now we can go into this reports tab and I've preloaded one up just for simplicity. And we can look over time series is the first way. So think of that influencer page, looking at the key variables. We're going to look at that over some time period. And obviously, if we have more than one prediction response variable, we can select what those are, what grade it is. But here it is. We've just got a basic Pareto chart that shows over that time period how often these variables were selected for importance. So what we always kind of look at is let's look at the top things because those are the things that the model is continuously using to make an accurate prediction. So if we know our prediction's good, these things should kind of tell us stuff. And we kind of look at the top 10 and say, what does that tell us? Some of these make sense, obviously, like we saw previously. Hey, weight and moisture control are very effective in telling us things about our strength. Slice slip, there's a lot of things in here that make sense. hey, then things start to show up like, draw sections and, hey, what's going on with our water clarification, aspects. So all pieces that start to kind of fill in the blanks of, hey, maybe these things are important that I want to think about because they're pretty good predictors. And maybe if I look at those processes or those variables a little bit closer, I can help manage that parameter better. You'll also see some are green and some are this red color. The green ones, when we onboard a customer, we kind of ask them, hey, with this parameter, how are you controlling it? So we ask for, the top 4 or 6 things that they do actively to manage that problem. Answers are, hey, I look at refining, I look at, basis weight, things of that nature. And we can scroll down here and we can actually show the control scheme for that parameter. And then over that time period, we can look at, the level of influence and the coefficient of variation. What we've also done a little bit too is kind of given some descriptions here to kind of people that may not be familiar with coefficient of variation or some of the concepts, kind of a little bit of cheat notes in here to kind of fill in blanks. So that's kind of nice. But really what we're looking for here is, okay, these are the things that the mill is using to control this parameter. How am I doing, right? Are they of influence and are they moving around a lot is kind of the key thing. So we look things that have a relatively low coefficient of variation, and a high level of influence, things that are being impactful. So we start to learn some things of, okay, hey, something odd's going on with our refiner here maybe, but we see, obviously weight control has some influence and maybe something around our chemistry. So it's just a good way of level setting what your data actually tells us versus what we think is happening. And then maybe adjusting that control strategy. So kind of digging deeper into the insights as to what does my data really tell me, and then start matching that up with, some of the gut checks around intuitive papermaking and the experience we have. So from that, Paul, I think we're going to switch back if you want to take control, and I think we're going to go back into some of the use cases.
Tony, you should have those up now.
Yep, I can see them. Great. So now let's walk through a couple more use cases, talking more specifically. And again, like you said, the foundation is really prediction, right? So you're trying to get a good predictive model and make informed decisions. So here's an example on a tissue customer, looking at strength, right? And just managing broke, which can kind of translate to just furnace changes, right? Those are hard to quantify, really complicated. There's a lot of dwell time, all of those components. So here, by having an accurate prediction that responds to all of the things that this broke change is going to, influence, vacuums changing, white waters, solids changing, all of these things we're looking at in the model, a higher level of confidence, and they can make those changes quicker. In this case, they're very hesitant. They would make very small moves. It would take a long time to change it. So not only just the amount of broke or furnace change they could make, it was also the time period they could do it too. So just one example of furnace optimization. Going to the next one, Paul. Here's one just looking at strength also in a tissue manufacturer. They had an unreliable base weight scanner, so it led to some variability in their process. So we had both a predictive model on basis weight and strength. And then here with having a higher visibility, better accuracy on those measurements, you can kind of adjust down with a higher level of confidence. Because I think anybody who's run paper machines, right, you run to that level of variation you can or cannot see and or control, right? So now we have visibility. We can kind of make those shifts and make better decisions off of that. And then we all know like small percentage changes in basis lead to pretty good dollars. Next one is, again, just kind of reiterating in strength, right? It's all about reducing variation, right? So you've got to do something with these predictions, right? You just can't look at them and it's autonomous, right? What you have to do is take action. So there, by making better decisions, you can see you shrink that bell curve, and then you can allow for a target shift, right? Just to get you target, or maybe even open the window of, hey, maybe we don't have to run our targets as high as we need to. And then we all kind of know as paper makers running our mills, those can come out in a lot of different values: strength, productivity, fiber optimization, even chemistry optimization. Next one. Yeah, here's just reiterating also on a packaging machine that we've seen benefits just by getting visibility, higher accuracy with the prediction and confidence in it. Hey, I don't necessarily need to run all of the weight I need to all the time. Shave that off, and typically on steam limited machines, we all know that typically translates into some speed. So here, just being able to bring visibility to the times when it's okay to take some weight off, you're in a good space, right? Capitalize on that, take the speed. It's just little things like that that all add up to good savings. And then here's one: chemistry. Obviously, we, Solenis is a chemical supplier, so here's another value stream of, when you've got tests around, functional chemistries, they're infrequent. There's a lot of variability in them. Using a predictive model to get higher level of accuracy and understanding of what that variability is allows for chemistry optimization. To feed the right amount of chemistry at the right amount of time is huge. And these are actual numbers from a trial we did, where when you're making actionable insights, you're using the prediction, not your lab value. You can see pretty optimization at times in chemistry, as with all the other raw materials. So a little bit of an overview of how we put all this together, and we think this is important from an understanding. How do we get to a big predictive model? In the past, that's been quite complex and takes time, but with machine learning and these new tools, it can be pretty efficient. It begins with, again, site questionnaire. There's no solution where you just pump data in and it gives you all the answers. So with our knowledge of chemistry and our knowledge of our customer sites, right? You sit with them and you get some context around what the problem is, what you're trying to look at. And then really just some baseline information around the quality parameter and process. And then with that, we also you need to look at all the tags, right? You don't need to be all encompassing, you need to be very representative. And we work through the mill with that to make sure there's kind of agreement and understanding. Once we get that initial data, we start talking with your IT group, because we do need a secure connection to be able to do this in real time. We know that takes time to facilitate, but we've done a pretty good job of getting the answers to the questions that need to be provided up pretty front. So with alignment with that group, get into the historian, if there's a little bit of a delay getting into the historian, we can pull offline data that doesn't hold us up. So we pull about 6 to 12 months of data, and that's relative to things like the grade mix of the machine, how healthy the data is, so how many parameters we're doing. So once we get our offline data, we go through it, and in about 4 to 6 weeks, we get what we call a data health assessment, which one tells you what tags are good enough and variables are okay to be used in predictive model. Basic things that don't move around, that just sit at 0 or sit at 1, aren't going to be very good, right? So we call those out through an automated process. We do basic, but also more robust data cleaning for the things we know need to happen further down the line. And then we also do a prediction assessment. So we run and train it offline, and we say, hey, look, we can predict, and here's some of the benefits you're going to see from doing that. So the 2 reports go to the customer right out the bat, and then we complete the historian connection and the deployment of the model into an environment. That's another about 4 to 6 weeks. And then we sit with the customer and we train them, take them through everything, much like we do in a new chemistry application. And then we go to implement it. And it's all about, like we said, it's not just putting the predictions on and walking away from them. It's new information needs to be utilized. So we kind of work with our customers hand in hand with that. So that's about our process, which is, call it the 10 to 12 kind of week kind of life cycle, really, from engagement to delivery.
Great.
And Paul,
thanks.
do you want? Yep.
Yeah, thank you. And so I think what you saw is really 3 big things that differentiate Solenis. Just the robustness of the technology itself, of the artificial intelligence and the machine learning, and the capabilities it brings. to the process that Tony just walked through is that we've spent just as much time on the process from the start, from the time we have a discussion through value delivery to make sure that everything is going smoothly and we just don't throw something over to the fence. We're there every step of the way in a very transparent way. And then 3 is the people. We mentioned throughout the presentation that, again, what differentiates is not just the software and the tool itself, but you have to have the paper domain experts working with our customers, working with the mills to really leverage the tool and help interpret the data, apply the data to make better decisions and to drive that value. And that's where we rely on our field team and our applications team. But in addition, what Solenis has built a very dedicated team that has a singular focus dedicated to optics to make sure that we're bringing the best product forward. There's very few companies out there in the chemistry space that have developed something as unique as this and have put as many dedicated resources that Solenis has. And the faces that you see here, represent 100 years of papermaking expertise, of data science experts. We have our own data science expertise within our company. Commercial folks and marketing folks that are only focused on this application. And obviously that's important to make sure that as we listen to the feedback, we've been deploying these for over a year now, continuing to listen to the feedback from the market, from customers, to continue to make sure that our product lifecycle as robust as possible. Tony on the IT infrastructure slide showed the different platforms that we've built out and continue to build out. And we wouldn't be able to do that as quickly or as thoroughly without a dedicated team and without our relationship that we have with our exclusive technology provider, Process Miner. So, in summary, what is OPTIX? And then we'll open it up for Q&A. But it is truly a novel turnkey solution. Again, what do we mean by turnkey? It's not just the capabilities of the technology, but all of the support around it, right? We are not just deploying a solution and then walking away from it and expect our customers, to use it, in a vacuum. We're there every step of the way. Again, reiterating not only that this is real time, but the accuracy, right? Tony showed you 2 supporting metrics where Solenis is very transparent to show you the accuracy of the model. So we're not just giving you a value and hoping that you believe in it. We actually give you insight to say, at what level is the model accuracy? How is it changing? And showing how it's learning. And again, that's via the tuning and the machine learning. And again, based on what you saw in the chart of the simple correlation between strength and basis weight and what's really happening on your machine and really how complex it is, in order to move beyond just the low-hanging fruit, which most of you have already achieved, right? You got to have better tools beyond your traditional analytics approaches, the tools that you currently use. You have to go to the next level and to really maximize your productivity, your efficiency, and that value captures. So again, all of that enables, right? Those components, those characteristics enable, operators to make informed on-the-fly process changes. No longer do they have to wait 30, 40 or more minutes to make a change, right? They now have that ability to be as responsive as possible. And then 2, as Tony said, is when it comes to the mill management, process engineers, the quality team, process improvement, we are giving a level of insights not previously available through those data science pages that Tony demonstrated around influencers, around dominant variables, around what's moving and what's not, and how much impact they have. The only way you can get that in real time is with a solution like OPTIX. And again, all of that enables you to capture more value that previously was unattainable. So with that, Beth Ann, we finished a little bit earlier just with the presentation, which is good because we opened up more time for questions and answers.
Absolutely. So at this time, anyone that has a question, you're welcome to type it in the chat window. Again, if you need to open the chat window, there's a toolbar that pops up at the bottom. There's a message icon. If you click on that icon, it will open the chat window for you. Or feel welcome to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the question. Just a little caveat here with Microsoft Teams is that it will catch the first person talking. So if there's multiple people talking at the same time, the first person will probably get through, and then we'll get to the next person down the line. I see that we do already have a question in the chat window here. Tony's probably towards you. How do you address bandwidth consumption when connecting multiple plants in multiple geographies?
Yeah, so key thing really that's why we have a great partner like Process Miner who understands not only data science, they understand how to manage this data in the most effective way. I mean, specifically, we haven't really had any really stressing issues on the plant's historians to date, and a lot of that has to do is we're not trying to recreate and tap into the whole historian. So like if they have 10,000 tags, we're only taking what we need the write amount to get the job done. So it's very, very low and very focused, and that's a difference versus sitting an embedded tool set on top of that and then really kind of bugging down the system. Just like Paul kind of reiterated, it's very focused towards the piece. So I think that's what allows us. But we may need follow up after with some of these individuals, but we can get more details after. But it's really, we're focused on getting what we need in small amounts, manageable amounts.
Quickly, do we have a case of us specifically interacting with OSI Pi? Tony?
Yeah, so I mean, and I'll even expand that beyond OSI. So I mean, we connect to a multitude of historians, so we're really not limited to that. And then areas where we don't have kind of an off-the-shelf, connector, we've typically been able to resolve that. But I think if you look a lot of those big partners, they've got all ways to connect to those folks. They've got their DK kits, things we can do. So yes, OSI, and just even more expansive than that.
And Tony, just to build on that, right, we have not run into a situation yet where whether it was the historian itself and whether process data or quality data happen to be in different systems, there has not been a case yet where we haven't been able to move forward.
Correct. Some of them get more challenging, but they're all obstacles that we kind of have the skill set to be able to overcome.
And Arvind, so I'm going to try and translate your question here, and I think this is probably what you're asking. So if you can get real-time data right now and you're managing through your existing process, what then, what is the point of something like OPTIX? And feel free to unmute yourself if you'd like to elaborate on the question. And I see you've added a second piece here, but Tony, I think you get the point. Do you mind answering?
Yeah,
to that?
and there's actually a similar question a little bit further down too, because it's all about I think from the same person, right? Yes, we're giving a prediction, right? And I think the second part of the comment was around, yes, people still have to solve the problem, right? How does that help? Great question. And okay, so the prediction is the foundation, and we've actually been learning this a lot over the past year is sometimes people have pretty good engagement and it gives them some insights. Where we're kind of headed is how do you potentially automate, take this information, and do advanced control with it, right? Because we don't run our paper machines in manual, right? Individuals invest money and they want to take the information, automate it, and continue to put the operators in an educated supervisory type role. This is just another pathway to get there, right? So getting a prediction, the next level of autonomous control, which we're actively involved in, a key piece. So that's kind of, I hope that answers the question. And then I think the second aspect is looking at also things around root cause analysis. So yes, I have visibility to a prediction, but now how do I really get through automated advanced analytics? Why are these things changing in real time, and doing it in a real time basis versus ad hoc, which is, hey, a bad thing happened last night or an hour ago, I've got to go pull data and diagnosis. How do I kind of now build off my predictive model and do that in real time? So those are the kind of the pieces we're moving towards down the road here.
And Tony, what we found is what speeds that the most, and it sounds very intuitive and simple, but it's really where it lies, is having these models run on your machine and having the connection to the historian. That starts to open up so many possibilities, but that's where you have to start. We can theorize all that we want, but until we actually get the models running, have access to the data, that's where we have to start. And as Tony laid out, that's a very quick process. It's a very quick implementation, and the resources and the time commitment required on behalf of the mill is very minimal. So, given that it's a fast process, the mill doesn't have to invest, dollars or resources to make this happen in any kind of significant way. The best place to start is, let's just get the models running, show what it can do, learn, and continue to evolve.
And a quick question for you, Paul. Thanks. How many customers do we currently have using OPTIX at this time?
Yeah, I won't give a specific number, but it's over a dozen in multiple countries. And we're running on, and those number of companies at mills represent numerous machines above just because we have models running on multiple machines in the same mill, and they represent multiple different models types. As Tony mentioned, if there is a response variable, if there's a lab test being taken, we can model that. And so whether it be in tissue, in packaging, in pulp, in newsprint or specialty, we either have models already running on lots of different parameters: stiffy, ring crush, wet tensile, dry tensile, kappa, brightness, the list goes on. We already have experience running those types of models.
Another question in the window here, Tony, you probably see it. I'll read part of it. So do we have applications in multi-former machines, specifically OCC linerboard and chipboard up to 4 plies? And then there's additional pieces to that, but if you'd like to go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, so I think, like Paul said, we don't really want to disclose where those machines are, but as far as multiply, we do not have any ones. But this is something we've talked about, and this is a great use case because of the multidimensionality we have there, right? So, yeah, no, not currently multiply machines, but it is a very good use case for this, because you've got a person trying to manage all of these parameters. This is a perfect use case for seeing what your data really tells you through utilizing machine learning in real time.
And Tony, does the OPTIX self-adapt for time?
Yeah, so I'll answer this 2 points. We do, this is basically around lag, right? Because some processes have, hour pulp to reel, some are a little bit longer than that. So we do account for that in a couple ways. One, just in the novel methods we use, but then also If there is specific information, right, and this is all why doing that initial deep dive into the questionnaire with subject matter expertise is important. If we know there's a point in the process that is of significant lag, we should account for that, right? So there's ways to account on both ends to really come towards a robust solution.
And I think this leads nicely into the following question is, how does OPTIX protect against bad data being entered from the operators or from the process, right?
Yep. So like any data solution, garbage in, garbage out. But what we'll start to see is there's metrics we look at prior to and also after to be able to call this out and understand where there's improper distribution of data. I mean, there's a bunch of methods that our team uses and looks at to be able to kind of show when this is happening. And it's, you know, in short, there are symptoms that can come out where you can be alerted to these types of things, both prior to making the model and also as the process goes on.
Right. And just to build off that, if I could, Beth Ann, number one is, again, because we have this robust upfront data validation process, we mitigate a lot of those, all of those upfront, right? And to be very frank, we've had to stop an engagement because we realized that the data either wasn't of a sufficient quantity or quality in order to produce an accurate prediction. And so again, we're very transparent. And what's important about that approach is very few of our customers today have actually done what I would call a data audit, right? They know they have a lot of data, but they really don't know what kind of condition it's in, and is it suitable to be applied to these advanced analytics approaches. As part of our data health assessment and our prediction accuracy, we provide that to the mill. And so then you know that, hey, before I go in and build these models, I know that it's technically it's going to work. And whether you decide to move forward with Solenis OPTIX or not, just understanding your data in that way, right? Is it suitable for artificial intelligence? Whatever forward path you go, is a great place to start. And then the second point, again, tying this to the previous question of, you know, what type of machine? Again, the primary factor that has stopped us from moving forward in model deployment is not the type of machine, is not the paper, is not the product being produced. It's, does the mill have the data to support this approach? And if it doesn't, then we have some alternative approaches. You know, we can do some alternative approaches, but again, it's not about the physical characteristics or the type of machine or the type of product. It's about the data.
Fantastic. Thank you, Paul. So we're a few minutes past the hour. Questions are great, and we ask you to continue to connect with us and ask those questions. And you're more than welcome to contact any of us here. Our emails are on the screen here, or Paul, if you'd like to go to the next slide, just give some more details here. Again, you're also welcome to reach out to your local Solenis rep. They have been instructed on OPTIX, and so they know what they're talking about. Also, you can visit solenis.com/optics to find out some more information. We have additional case studies, white papers there for you to view. Following the end of this presentation, you will receive a copy of the recording and also a survey to complete. And we ask that you complete the survey so that we can gain some more insights and understand how we can better deliver webinars to you and also deliver more interesting content. That being said, also mark your calendars for August 12th at 9 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time for OPTIX Part 2. It's Papermaking Industry 4.0, gain more insight from the data you already have. This will be delivered by our data scientist, Sydney Recton. And again, I want to close by saying thank you all for attending, and we can reach back out to you if you have a question, or reach out to us if you have a question, and we'll connect with you. Thank you very much for attending. Have a good day.
Thank you, everybody.